To the public eye, this was the age of progress, wealth, and opportunity. But hidden behind the smoke-filled skies of industry was something even more powerful: money. And not just money, but the men who controlled it. The ordinary citizen believed presidents and politicians were running the nation. But in truth, the real architects of America's future were families like the Morgans, Rockefellers, and Rothschilds. They weren't just businessmen, they were empire builders. And what they built was not a country, but a system one designed to ensure that money always flowed through their hands. The peak of this power came in 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. Officially, it was introduced to stabilize the American economy. But let's be clear, this was no ordinary government agency. It was a privately controlled institution designed in secrecy on Jekyll Island by the nation's most powerful bankers. The public never voted for it, yet suddenly the Federal Reserve had the authority to print money, set interest rates, and decide how much credit the economy could handle. Think about it, one institution gained the power to control every dollar in circulation. This wasn't democracy, it was financial monarchy. The people believed they were free, but every paycheck, every loan, and every coin in their pocket now had a hidden master. This shift marked the beginning of a new kind of empire. An empire not built on armies or territory, but on debt and money. Wars, recessions, booms, and busts all could now be engineered from behind the polished doors of America's most powerful bank. And as America marched into the 20th century, it wasn't the White House or Congress leading the way. It was the bankers quietly pulling the strings, ensuring that no matter who rose or who fell, the system would always belong to them. If money is power, then war is the ultimate business. And in the 20th century, America's bankers discovered a truth that would change history forever: conflict is not a tragedy, it's an opportunity. When World War I erupted in 1914, the United States was still debating whether to join. But for the banks, neutrality was never an option. War meant governments would borrow massive sums, and who better to lend that money than the Federal Reserve and the Wall Street giants behind it? Every bullet fired, every ship built, every soldier fed, it all came with a price tag, and that bill was paid in interest. By the time America entered the war in 1917, billions had already been loaned to Britain and France. If those countries lost, the bankers would lose too. So the drums of war beat louder, and the United States marched in not just to fight, but to protect an investment. Ordinary young men thought they were fighting for freedom. In truth, they were also fighting for bankers' profits. And when the war ended, something even more profitable emerged: debt. Nations devastated by destruction needed to rebuild. They borrowed again, sinking deeper into financial chains. For the banks, peace could be just as lucrative as war. The cycle repeated in World War II. Behind the patriotic speeches and heroic battles was the same engine of finance. American factories supplied the Allies, financed by loans and bonds. The war effort pulled the U.S. out of the Great Depression, but it also cemented the Federal Reserve's dominance. By 1945, America wasn't just a military superpower, it was the financial capital of the world. But here's the darker truth. Once bankers realized war could rescue economies, conflict was no longer something to avoid, it became part of the system. Crises created debt. Debt created dependence. And dependence guaranteed control. From Europe to Asia, history shows a haunting pattern. Wars come and go, leaders rise and fall, but the bankers always remain. For them, every battlefield is a marketplace. Every soldier is a customer. And every war, no matter how bloody, becomes another chapter in the story of profit. If war was the fuel that made the banking machine unstoppable, debt was the chain that kept nations locked in place. Long after the cannons went silent and the soldiers returned home, one enemy remained: undefeated: interest. Debt is invisible. It doesn't march on battlefields, it doesn't wave a flag, but it is more powerful than any army. When a nation borrows money, it is not just borrowing dollars, it is surrendering freedom. Every loan comes with strings, and behind those strings sit the bankers, quietly pulling. After World War II, the United States emerged as the lender of last resort. Europe lay in ruins, economies shattered, governments desperate. The Marshall Plan poured billions into rebuilding, but none of it was free. The money flowed with interest, and with it came influence. America's banks and their allies and the Federal Reserve didn't just rebuild nations, they built dependence. And it wasn't just foreign countries. At home, the same machine worked on ordinary Americans. Mortgages, student loans, credit cards, each one a link in the same chain. An average citizen could spend their entire life working, only to discover that most of their earnings went not to freedom, but to servicing debt. The system was designed that way. Then came crises. The Great Depression, the oil shocks of the 1970s, the housing collapse of 2008. Each disaster looked like a failure. But for the bankers, every crisis was also an opportunity. When businesses fell, banks bought them for pennies. When homes were foreclosed, banks took them back. When currencies collapsed, banks controlled the recovery. The worse the crisis, the tighter the grip. This is the hidden genius of debt. It doesn't just take money, it takes power. Politicians may give speeches, presidents may promise change, but debt remains the silent lawmaker. Nations cannot vote it away. Citizens cannot escape it. And every time the world staggers under the weight of a new financial collapse, the same question emerges. Was it an accident or was it engineered? Because if chaos creates opportunity, then perhaps the system doesn't just survive crises, it needs them. Debt is not just an economic tool, it is a weapon, and those who control it control the world.
Debt may chain nations, but behind the curtain stands something even bigger, an empire without borders, without armies, without a flag. It is not America. It is not Europe. It is the network of banks that now control both. At the heart of this empire is the Federal Reserve. Many believe it is a government agency. It is not. It is a private system, created in 1913, owned by member banks. It prints the money, sets the interest, and dictates the cost of every dollar in circulation. Presidents come and go, but the Fed remains. Even Congress bows to its invisible authority. But the empire stretches far beyond Washington. Across the Atlantic sits the Bank of England. Across Europe, the European Central Bank. In Asia, the Bank for International Settlements, sometimes called the Bank of Central Banks. Each works together, quietly coordinating policy, ensuring that the flow of money is never disrupted. The result? Nations may seem independent, but their economies are not. A leader who resists is swiftly punished. Their currency crashes. Their markets collapse. Foreign investors flee. Wars may destroy cities, but banks can destroy nations without firing a single shot. And yet, this empire does not look like tyranny. It wears the mask of stability. News anchors call it monetary policy. Economists call it market corrections. But for the ordinary citizen, the reality is simple. Prices rise. Wages stagnate. Debt deepens. The machine keeps turning, always upward, always in favor of those who own it. This is why some call it the bank that owns America. Because the American dream home, education, freedom cannot exist without borrowing, and every borrowed dollar strengthens the empire. So the question is not whether banks control nations. They already do. The real question is, who controls the banks? Who stands at the top of this hidden empire? Is it families, corporations, or something even larger? That answer remains locked away, hidden behind layers of secrecy. But one truth is undeniable. When the world bows to money, those who control money rule the world. And until that changes, the empire of debt will continue to reign.